There's so many big updates that we learned when we met with CBP. We just had a 4-hour meeting, and I'm gonna make 2 videos. This is the first video talking about all the things we learned during the quarterly meeting. I'm gonna break it down to the key takeaways. The second video is about the things I learned when we went on a tour of LAX. There's so many good things there as well. So let's get to it. Number 1, if you get in trouble at LAX, your visa is getting revoked, you are being returned to your home country, you are signing some sort of waiver, you are getting some sort of declaration, the officer has the computer open, typing it away at what you're saying. If you fall into any of those circumstances, you are entitled to a sworn statement printed out and given to you. You would think that they would do it for everyone, but again, because of procedure, maybe they're too busy, so they don't. But you are entitled to it, so you can request. So if you are in that unfortunate situation, maybe it's a misunderstanding, doesn't matter, get a printed copy. If you want a representative to get it for you, for example, a lawyer, you have to go through the FOIA, you have to go through this long channel. This is standard across the board nationally, but again, if you have a very urgent situation, maybe they're willing to look into it, but you yourself, as the applicant, as the person giving the sworn statement, you are entitled to get a copy. You are not entitled to have legal representation at the time when you're arriving. That's crazy. Even if you are a US citizen, even if you are a green card holder, as an arriving person, you are not entitled to representation immediately, right? And so you cannot say, I'm going to talk to my lawyer, right? But you are entitled to a printed copy of your sworn statement. So that is a big thing. This is a new administration there at the LAX. We're meeting all the new directors, the officers. These are not like new people that they got hired on. They've been working there for like 15, 20 years. They're very, very capable. But as all government agencies go, and this is good for anti-corruption purposes, you want to switch personnel very often, right? The military keeps on switching personnel every few years. People at the consulate keeps on switching every few years. There's good policy for that, because if you don't, then corruption will likely fester. But if you keep on changing, then everyone's loyalty is to the mission, is to the government. And so again, LAX, every few years, there's a shift in personnel, new directors, new policy, new discretionary, new thoughts, new way to do things. And again, every single year is different. And so now they are kind of changing up the process to accommodate for all the new demand. But first and foremost, if you are in trouble, get that statement, because afterwards, after you've been deported, after you've been removed, after you voluntarily withdraw, after you get back to your home country and you need to apply for a new visa and you're hiring a lawyer, you're doing it yourself, you want to explain what happened. And if you don't have that printed out copy, good luck trying to explain it. Number 2, expired or lost green card while you're overseas. How are you supposed to get back? Now, things happen in life, right? Your green card is lost, when your wallet gets jacked, you know, your house was broken into, something happened, right? One case we had, the nanny accidentally washed it. You know, how natural is that, right? Things happen. But what do? The formal official response by CBP officers at LAX is saying, you get an I-131A, right? You can look at that up on USCIS website. I-131A, confusingly, it's also called a reentry permit. The second thing is to get a 551 stamp if you're still in the country. And third is you go to the consulate to get an SB1 returning visa to come back in the country. Those are the 3 correct things to do. Now, realistically, most people, or a lot of people, can't do that, right? Just here, let's go through why. I-131A, there's a time limit to it. So now, if you're overseas for only a short period, maybe the I-131A will solve your problem, and that could be fine. But some people are overseas for a longer than that time period allows, typically a year, or they need to come back a lot sooner, right? For example, you lost your green card, but you need to come back next week. The I-131A process could take a couple months, even if you qualify. 551 stamp, you need to be able to, you know, see into the future in order to do the 551 stamp, because in order to get the 551 stamp, you need to have gotten it in the US before you left. But how would you know if your green card was going to get lost or stolen or jacked when you're overseas, right? So there's no way you to know that. Now, maybe you could say, well, you know, everybody should just get the 551 stamp before they leave the country. Yes, sure, but nobody would actually do that because the time and process to go, it's not like super simple. You go to the local 7-Eleven or gas station and bam, you can get a 551 stamp. Although USCIS would stand to make a lot of money if they kind of roll that out nationwide, every gas station, right? Every supercharger, boom, stamp your 551 stamp. And now you have a green card and you have a stamp, right? Proving you can enter the country. But unfortunately, you have to go through this long and arduous InfoPass appointment to try to get the stamp. It's way harder than the DMV. It's like DMV on steroids to try to even get a stamp. And you need to see into the future. So that's probably the hardest part. The third thing is to get a SP1 visa at the consulate. The denial rate is sky high, right? 99%, that my personal opinion from what I've seen, it's really, really, really hard to get an SP1 visa approved, which means realistically, if you are overseas with an expired green card, or if your green card is lost and you've been out for a significant amount of time, meaning over like a year, it is gonna be really difficult for you to get back. And the formal response by CBP at LAX is only those 3 correct things. Now, that's fair, right? You can't expect CBP officers at LAX to solve all the problems in the world. Those are the 3 formal ones. So here, at that meeting, that's where we're discussing as all the attorneys. Everybody was talking about like, well, what other solutions? And there were a lot of things shared in the meeting. So not formally by LAX CBP officers sharing the solutions, but there at the meeting, all the other attorneys were discussing privately, well, what did you do? And some attorneys were saying like, some clients just were actually able to fly back. Some people were able to get on the airplane and be able to come back. Some people got the airline regional CBP officers like from Hawaii telling the airline saying they can board with an expired green card, and then they get on the plane and they fly in and the CBP officer were able to accept them in. So a lot of discussions on how to get people back in the US that is more than the formal response. And that's one of the benefits of going to these meetings, because you're not there just to hear what the officials are saying. You are there with all the people who represent the hundreds of clients who have those same issues, and everybody sharing notes. It's beautiful. It's like the night before the final in college where all the best students are together sharing notes and talking, at least for classes that are not graded on a curve. Number 3, can a lawful permanent resident green card holder come back into the United States if they have left the US for over 1 year? What is CBP's policy regarding that here at LAX? Well, they didn't quite answer it, but the situation is pretty dire, right? Because that's the law, but given COVID in 2020, given everything that happened in Afghanistan, in Iran, in the surrounding regions, Egypt, and then going into Ukraine, and then Russia, and then Israel, and then the surrounding areas of Israel, there's a lot of demand for people who want to come back but can't, right? There are global political, economic reasons why people could not freely travel back to the US who were lawful permanent residents. Given those scenarios that's happening around the world, when people are flying back in, if they've left the US for over 1 year, what is the official red line? What is the policy? What is the discretionary factors? We wanted to hear from the officers that are doing this day in and day out. How do they judge it? Because every airport across the country is doing this differently, right? The CBP officers at Dubai, the CBP officers in London, the CBP officers in New York, JFK, LAX, Seattle, we've seen almost all of them, and they're all adjudicating differently. And that's just CBP, right? If you throw in the mix with the consulate, oh, that's a different story entirely. What does CBP at LAX have to say about this? Unfortunately, they said they'll get back to us, right? But I know they will. I know they will. They're good people. They're good officers. And so once I hear back from them, we're going to make a separate dedicated video on that. It's really important for people to know this because one big takeaway as a fact, right? It's in this uncertain world, a lot of things are uncertain. But what's much more interesting is what is certain, right? And so what is certain is that this is a discretionary situation, and it's a fluid situation. And it was one way before COVID. During COVID 2020, it was another way. And then since then, everything is changing. And that's why it's so important to go to these meetings, to talk to the officers, and to get an good feel of what it's actually being adjudicated right now and what they want to see. And we want to share this information as soon as we get it, right? So again, the situation at large is in the world is very, very complicated, and you need to prepare and present your case. We're going to do a separate video on the, and this is what I learned when we did the tour of how to prepare when you talk to an officer. So that's a whole separate video content that's really, really good. You know, I highly recommend it. But as of now, if you are a green card holder overseas and you've been out for over 1 year, again, just know that it's a very discretionary thing, and you want to prepare your case well. You want to prove that the U.S. is your home, and the reason why you're abroad is temporary in nature, and you couldn't come back for XYZ reasons, and you want to prepare it, and you want to be able to explain it. Now, as far as what are the factors, we'll do a separate video about that. I made tons of videos about this particular situation over the years. Why? Because every single year is different. COVID was a good excuse. COVID is not a good excuse anymore. You know, like passport being confiscated was a good excuse, but not in your situation, right? Like, so many situations. Let's, really be mindful of it. Again, the law did not change, but the world is changing, and the law needs to be adaptable to the circumstances of the world, because if not, well then, our system will fall apart. Laws are good, but it's adjudicated by people, and good people, hopefully. Number 4, advance parole. If you are coming back overseas on an advance parole, how long can you stay outside? That is a big question. Now, what's the difference between advance parole and a reentry permit? That is very important to know, because what I'm talking about really only applies to advance parole, although tangentially applies to reentry permit, which I'm going to talk about in a bit as well. Advance parole are for generally 2 classes of people. One class of people are the people who are applying for a green card but didn't get it quite yet. It's like a temporary green card that allows you in advance to leave the country and to be paroled back into the country, right? So maybe you got married to a US citizen, but you need to go back to your home country to clean up some work and, your pet, and you want to take care of your mother. So you need to leave the country, you apply for advance parole. Or you are in a very specific situation in your humanitarian case and you need to apply for advance parole. You didn't get your green card yet, but in advance, they grant you this parole. You file it with the I-131, just like the reentry permit, right? So the reentry permit is you have a green card already, but you need to leave the US for a significant amount of time, generally 1 or 2 years or more. So you apply for the reentry permit. Both documents, the advance parole and the reentry permit, are both documents that allow people to leave the country and get back in. Unlike US citizens who can just leave and come back with no restrictions whatsoever, generally speaking, we'll talk about that later, and people with advanced parole, people who are in the process of getting a green card or in a humanitarian situation, you need an advanced parole to be admitted back into the US. Reentry permit, if you are a green card holder, you should be here, but if you need to leave and you need a, excuse, you need to be able to leave for a while, you apply for the reentry permit. So the question is, how long is it okay to be out on an advance parole? And you can see the lawyers thinking when they ask this question, right? Because let's say you got married to a US citizen, like let's say, hypothetically, you flew in as a tourist, you went on an online dating app, you met the love of your life, you got married, they filed for you, they're a US citizen, and now you have advanced parole, and then you leave the country and you don't come back for like 1.5 years. Is the marriage real? Are you trying to circumvent, the visa system? It just looks shady all around, right? Not to say that that's not a realistic situation that does happen. I'm sure it does. But, why, you got married here, you're supposed to live here. Why did you just leave for 1.5 years? So that's the question. The official response is you can leave as long as the advance parole is valid. And I love that, right? It's a clean-cut answer. And that actually applies to reentry permit from my personal experience. So what I'm about to say now is not officially responded by LAX CBP officers. That's purely my own feeling. Generally speaking, a reentry permit grants you 2 years or 1 year. And when you have that, typically the CBP officers do not give you a hard time. It is not a definitive shield to guarantee you will be able to be entered. They ultimately have the authority. They could totally cancel your reentry permit. They could they could confiscate your green card. They can force you to return if they consider you a national security threat. CBP officers have a lot of authority. It is not an ultimate shield for entry, but generally speaking, from the hundreds and thousands of cases that we do every single year, I can almost say with certainty, if you have a reentry permit and it is still valid, generally speaking, they ask you some questions, you will be admitted in. Here's the reason why. CBP, they have their rules and responsibilities. They have a lot of things that they have to look out for. They are not going to do the work of somebody else, meaning USCIS, right? Is your marriage real? Do you deserve your green card? You know what? That takes a whole set of training and adjudication and paperwork to make that determination. The CBP officers, they have like 90 seconds to determine if you're admissible or not. And if you're not, they have to prepare a case against you. It's a lot of work. So maybe you came in as a tourist, maybe you filed your case, maybe you got advanced parole, and then you left your significant other here in the US and you're abroad. There's so many things, so many questions, but you know what? There's a time and place for everything, and this is not the time. That's the kind of rationale that I'm saying on behalf of the CBP officers. They didn't say it, they just straight up said, as long as your advanced parole is valid, it generally should be fine. There's no time restrictions, So take that. Pregnant tourists. This was a really fun question, all right? So the question was, what are the rules of a CBP officer when they see a visibly pregnant woman who is trying to enter the country? Birth tourism, hot topic. What do you think, right? It's a really interesting one. There's a lot of political issues about this. It's very controversial. You know what? This is the formal response. They will be adjudicated according to the rules of B1, B2 tourist. And that is the most politically correct thing to say, right? And let me kind of unpack that for you. Whatever your beliefs are about birth tourism, meaning you give birth and your child is a US citizen, you are not, and then you go back to your home country. Whatever your belief about that particular situation, there is no formal law that bans that. It is illegal to lie about your intention. So if you say, I'm here to see Mickey Mouse, but obviously you are not seeing Mickey Mouse, right? If you have dual intent and all this stuff, if you're lying and you misrepresent yourself, that is illegal, and that is fraud and misrepresentation. You get your visa canceled. You have a really hard time ever stepping into the country again. But if you are honest and straight up about your intentions, and it is not against the law, and the officers adjudicate you and see you are gonna pay for the medical bills, you have enough funding, you have enough lodging, this is not human trafficking, you have everything correct, then maybe they could adjudicate you and allow you in on a case-by-case basis. Every airport, every CBP officer has their own discretion surrounding this particular issue, but the correct thing to say is they will be, because if they didn't say that, if they said instead, they will be revoked and turned away, lawsuits, right? Because now suddenly CBP officers are creating their own laws in violation, where Congress makes the laws, right? If you are gonna say this class of people, right, they just can't come in, we're gonna turn away every single one, that's not great, right? But it's the right thing to say they will be adjudicated on a B1 and B2 visa. And if their intentions are correct, then we'll adjudicate accordingly, case-by-case basis. This opened up a huge can of worms, right? Because then we actually started talking about all sorts of situations, because B1, B2 tourists is the highest number of people coming into our country, right? Tourists from all around the world coming in. Do you think US citizens and lawful permanents are coming in more than tourists? Absolutely not. Do you think, extraordinary business visa holders are coming into the country more than anybody else? No. Mostly tourists, mostly visa waiver people. But the question is, what is permissible when you come in as a tourist, and what is not permissible. And there is so much gray area since the founding of our country regarding this B1, B2 visa category. Just to give you some examples of things that we talked about, especially here in LA, in Hollywood. If you're coming in to do a casting for a show, is that permissible? Is that not permissible? It is generally not permissible if you are coming here to work. Is an interview considered a work? If you are here as a background, if you're doing sponsors, if you're walking the red carpet, if you're showing off your outfit, is that work? Is that not work? If you're being paid overseas, is that okay? If you're being paid here by a sponsor, is that okay? There's so many instances that it falls into that gray area. If you are an influencer or a content creator and you're going through Sephora and filming all these things and talking about all the products, that's your main line of work overseas, and then you're getting paid. Are you here stealing other American influencer jobs or not? It becomes extremely confusing. And birth tourism is right there in the middle of that gray area. Is it permissible? Is it not permissible? What is CBP officer supposed to do? Until there's a clear executive order, a change in law, they are bound by what's there. And if they say anything differently, then they're gonna get sued, right? And it's gonna be sued up the wazoo. So again, the question, a visibly pregnant woman trying to enter the country, what would you do? What would a CBP officer do? If the pregnant woman misrepresents herself, that is going to be the problem, right? And that's where they have full legal authority to cancel the visa and revoke the visa. Now, if you say, she said she is going to go to Disneyland, and then before she can finish her sentence, the officer immediately cancels and then kicks her out. She was about to say she was gonna give birth as well and provide all documents, but language barrier, that's a whole different can of worms, right? That is a very tricky situation, and I think everybody who's dealing with this particular situation needs to be extremely mindful of this fact. If you don't say you're gonna give birth, but you visibly look like you're going to give birth, they will suspect you to be lying. Defer inspection. This is the place where if anything went wrong on your entry and you're in the country, that's where you get things corrected. So I-94 problems, right? You entered on the wrong I-94. You have a global entry and you're entering in, but when you applied for the global entry, you had a tourist visa, and now you are trying to come in as an O1, but then you didn't update the global entry, but the global entry brought you in, but now suddenly you wanted to work, no one stopped you from working, people gave you money, but you came in as a tourist officially on the I-94 record. Now you unlawfully worked, you overstayed, so your visa is going to cancel, your global entry is going to cancel, and you will never be able to come back to the US ever again because your visa is going to get revoked, and good luck trying to get another visa at a consulate. That's a problem, right? Anytime you have a problem because of a system, and systems are created, but there's going to be problems with every single system, right? Global entry for foreigners, that's amazing, but there's going to be a problem because you're not officially admitted, and people have multiple visas, right? I've seen people who have a tourist visa, a student visa, both valid, and then they get like an O1 extraordinary ability visa, right? They have 3 visas, but you can only be admitted in one visa category, right? You can leave and come back on the other one, but you can only be here in the US on one visa at a time because each visa category carries with it its own rules and responsibilities, what you can do, what you cannot do, who can be with you, who cannot be with you. There's so many things. So, most people have one visa. Actually, most people in the world don't even have a visa to come back in the US. But if you're lucky enough to have a visa waiver or have a visa, you should come in with that. But if you have more than one visa, you need to very clearly explain to the CBP officer which visa you want to come in as. And then if you have global entry, you need to update that global entry system so that whichever visa you want to enter, you're using that one to enter in. As well as the students. And there's a whole nother video I'm going to talk about students in the tour video. But if you are an F1 international student and you are trying to come into the country with your I-20, with your new I-20, but you had an old I-20, you need to make sure the CBP officer allows you to enter with that new I-20. I know this was a big discussion during the meeting, okay? Because what the CBP officer said didn't quite sit right with a lot of people in the room, right? So basically, here's the situation. International student comes in, has the passport, has the visa, has the old I-20, has the new I-20. And reason is, you can imagine, somebody was here studying at a boarding school, now they go to college. Change schools, so new I-20. Or undergrad is finished, now you're going to grad school. New I-20, right? This happens very often for many people around the world annually. But when they present themselves to the the CBP officer doesn't show you their screen. They look at it and they process you, hit enter, and you may leave. How would the student, this international student, after a long flight, what are they supposed to do? They are trusting the CBP officer to do their job. The CBP officer oftentimes enters the wrong I-20, right? They scan the passport, they scan the I-20, they look at the visa, they take your picture, and on their system, it's your information, your visa, and your old I-20. If you didn't bring out the new I-20, or if they were confused, they didn't see it, how is the officer supposed to know? And maybe it's a 10-hour shift, they're tired. Whatever the excuse is, it's a very unfortunate situation, because now you're in a situation when you have an international student that might not be able to explain everything to the officer, and you have the officer that might not know the situation. Admitting the student on the wrong I-20 causes grave consequences down the road, because essentially they're not on the right path and they could be unlawfully. Now, you could get that corrected in deferred inspection, but that takes time, that takes energy, that takes the day, that might need legal representation. It's all very confusing. You might have to file a reinstatement, which costs even more with more wait time. So what do you do, right? So we were there, lawyers representing clients who had this exact same situation, talking to the CBP officer, and the CBP officer's response is, please let the student make sure that they are admitted on the right I-20. You can see why that didn't quite sit well with everyone, because come on, these are students. But again, from the CBP standpoint, they are trying to do their best. There's tens of thousands of people coming in. Everybody's situation is different. If the student doesn't fight for their right and to make sure their situation is correct, just like that unique, extraordinary person who has like 2 or 3 visas, they need to make sure that they are coming in with the right visa. If the students come in with the multiple I-20s, they need to make sure that the system has the correct I-20. Of course, we asked, what is the student supposed to say? The CBP officer said, well, if I was a student, I would say, I just want to check that I'm entering on this school. It's a new I-20. It is a simple statement. And again, if you're an international student, you should be able to say that in English, right? And the CBP officers should be able to double check for you. Now, we're going to go into a whole separate video talking about how CBP officers are trying to be able to help all these students as much as they can so this error doesn't happen. So, you know, CBP officers are not just completely putting this burden on all the international students around the world. But if you are a student and if you're in this situation, definitely do that. This whole segment is supposed to be talking about deferred inspection. I spent so much time talking about F1 student, but it is a very important part, right? But anyways, anytime there is a big mistake, deferred inspection is the place to fix it. It's time consuming, it's difficult. Sometimes it needs legal representation. Sometimes they won't even see legal representation. There were a lot of lawyers in the room who did litigation with deferred inspection. The boss of deferred inspection for years and years are now running the place. So it's a system that is unfortunate, but it's there and it's fixing things. And a lot of the problems they deal with day in, day out are the I-94 mistakes. So if we could just figure out how to correct the I-94 mistakes, that will save time and energy for everybody involved. And that's what our bar association is trying to do with CBP, so we could do this. But this is a national effort. It's not just a local LAX issue. Okay, so again, takeaway, deferred inspection. There's good people, smart people who's there dealing with these situations. They have good policies on how to prevent mistakes from going to deferred inspection. But if there is a problem, deferred inspection is a place to go to fix it. And again, all the information is online, the deferred inspection. You can go there and find your deferred inspection center, contact them, and try to get your situation fixed. So those were my 7 big key takeaways from the CBP meeting, May 2024. There were a lot more things that were discussed. I didn't share everything. A lot of them were very standard, but those were ones that I found most valuable. We asked over 25 questions formally. The memo, I'm sure you can find it online. But AILA and LACPA, right, the American Immigration Lawyer Association, jointly with the LA County Bar Association, we meet together with the CBP officers. This is a joint stakeholders meeting. People from LACPA and AILA were invited to go and to meet with CBP officers. They spent like 3 hours, multiple officers. They take our questions, they answer our questions, we discuss, we strategize. You can see the effort. You know what? Nobody paid for nobody to do this, right? Taxpayer money is paying for CBP officers to be there to try to make things better. More than 25 lawyers and God knows how many other paralegals that supported them were in that room, and at least 4 or 5 of them were immigration law specialists, including myself. Yay, nobody paid for any of us to be there. Everybody went there on our own volition, talking with CBP officers, trying to make our immigration system better. That is how this country is run, in a way, from the bootleg standpoint, right? There's Congress and there's the executive branch who are dealing with like big issues globally, sure. But how do you deal with this pregnant woman coming in, like right in front of you, and there's like 10,000 people waiting in line, right? Like, how do you adjudicate? The CBP officers need guidance from the Private Bar Association. The Private Bar Association represents a lot of clients who have particular issues, and we see things from all humanitarian aspects, right? There's people who represent people from Israel, from Palestine, people who represent clients from Ukraine and Russia, people who are representing clients from all over the world, business, and people who need TPS status, right? So in that room, there were like pretty much a representation of everybody that needs to come to the US. I mean, we're talking about like Brazilian dancers, right? People who purely represent Brazilian dancers who are extraordinary, getting an O1 visa. Can they come in with just a printout of an email of the O1 without the original documentation, right? We have every single issue there. And we're teaching the CBP officers. The CBP officers are sharing what they are doing and what their thoughts are. And we are collectively trying to solve the problem of immigration and how to get this economy and how to get this country rolling. We had a great time, and it was so important to meet and to discuss and to plan. Our next meeting is in September. I can't wait to go. Hopefully you can see the hard work behind the scenes, because maybe you just have a bad impression of CBP officers who don't give a about every single person, but they do, and they work really, really hard to make things happen the way they happen, right? And there's so many other lawyers behind the scenes and not taking any taxpayer dollars that are volunteering their time to try to make things better, right? And nobody's just pushing an agenda, pushing their own cases. We're trying to create a good system, because we have seen during COVID, when the consulates and USCIS shut down, CBP was the only immigration branch pretty much open to save the day, and they did it. And we have to give them credit for that. So if you have any other questions, before the next meeting, feel free to reach out. I'll collect it, and maybe we'll be able to get those questions answered. All right, take care. Bye-bye.